Hello, and welcome once again to Mark My Words, a podcast series offering a glimpse into alternative paradigms hiding just beneath the surface of everyday life, where our first question of the day is always, what if? And what if we remind ourselves that in our last episode, one of the keynotes was not so much the what, but more emphasis on the how. Here to explain that again, once again, is Mark Cornelius, author of Rut Management. And Mark, I'm going to let you give a quick review and then we'll delve into today's episode.
Well, thanks very much. And good morning, Paul. Good morning, all you thinkers out there. Hope you have your caps on because we're going to just get this uh, car on the road and just press down the accelerator right now. So last week we talked about, or last episode, excuse me, we spoke about the fact that it's important to incorporate both inductive and deductive reasoning into any kind of thinking that you do. And those seem like big, tall words, but actually, all it means is what is it that I want to be true, and what is it that is actually true? What is the difference in those two realities? Because that shapes our thinking. And if you're not ready to, kind of break those barriers, then you're going to be stuck in traditions that somebody else taught you that don't really mean much. You might think it's your thinking, but actually it's somebody else's influence on your thinking. So I'm going to start off today. Uh, and by the way, let's just kind of do a quick run through here. I'm sorry, of books that you might want to consider looking at in talking about all this. The original, Rut Management, which talks about the routines of everyday life and how to make those not only discoverable, but also interesting and challenging to you. So grab that one for sure. Then you might also want to read Marginalize. That's what we do when we don't like something. we we marginalize it. We marginalize someone who doesn't meet our standards. Well, there's a lot to that one, and we'll talk about that ongoing. And then finally, and I just put the wrong one out there. Hold on. Um, there we go. On measuring, how you break those cycles, how you look at and listen to a different point of view, a story, if you will, that someone else is sharing without judging or prejudging, and then coming to a communication, a level of communication with that person. Don't have to agree with them, but you certainly better understand them and they better understand you so you can come to a reasonable relationship and not marginalize them. So that's what we're after today. Now, that being said, here, hold on, I'm going to get to the teaser of the day. And
Right.
I want to make sure that everyone is seeing this clearly. It is a favorite quote of mine by a very good friend, and it reads for itself. This is the way we typically go through life. We say we're needy. The truth of it is, I'm wanting. I want something to be true. I want people to hear me. I want rather than need to be relevant. Make sense?
It does.
All right. So, and also in our last episode, by the way, uh, how you think, not what you think, we really began to dig into the method of our thinking, and we had two different applications there. This is how we typically go through life. One of these two agendas. I have a purpose and I want to justify my actions. Right? That is, in a nutshell, that is inductive thinking. I want to make reality mine. Now, there's also another aspect to that, and neither one of these is really the most attractive way to do it. We'll talk about that later. But you have no purpose at all, and you want to excuse or justify. I do my inaction. I don't want to have to think about things. I don't want to have to prove them out. So I'm just going to go along with life and just on my merry way. I'm going to do what I want, and if you want to agree or disagree with me, doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, if I want to agree or disagree with me, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go blindly about life. Not really the way to approach it. So, you know what? We're going to think, thinkers, and this is going to be a different way of doing it. What is it that you or me, what am I trying to gain? What is my purpose in thinking? Let that one kind of twist around in your head a little bit. What is it that you're trying to gain? So, how do you knit? And you see, there you go. That's how we do it. We challenge ourselves. That's what thinking is all about. We believe that we have everything figured out, but it's only when reality steps in and we say, that doesn't fit with what I normally do or think. It's unconventional wisdom. Well, if it's unconventional, not conventional wisdom, how do you process that? How do you work through that? Or do you? Do you just ignore it and marginalize it? So that's what we're going to be all about in this series. It's already what we're all about. And I'm going to make a quick conclusion. This is going to be a short one. We're going to talk about it, right, Paul? But
absolutely,
and draw a conclusion, and let me hear what you think. And this is one I came by through a very neat guy. You ought to look him up. I'm not going to do it for you because then I'd be doing your knitting for you. But this is the guy who you really want to look at. A Stoic by the name of I'm going to mispronounce. I always mispronunciate my Greek. So Epictetus.
I can help there, Mark. It's Epictetus.
Yes, thank you very much. You see, you spit it right out. And that's where my thinking. All right, but he had a great lesson to teach us. He was a Stoic, by the way, and for those of you who don't know what a Stoic is, it's somebody who looks at life in its very fairest, cleanest form. So as you think, so you become. Our busy minds are forever jumping to conclusions, manufacturing and interpreting signs that aren't there. Well, how does that happen, Paul?
It sounds like a lot of folks from our current society and culture have been doing that for some time.
Oh.
And I think a lot of this is preconceived notions, as you mentioned before, about looking for things and seeing things that, as Epictetus so well said thousands of years ago, that these signs that aren't there. Yeah. And it's interesting because some of the stuff that we're talking about right now is what he's talking about. It's how you think that throws us for a loop in this because we're looking for things that we already know and make us feel safe. And that's the biggest, perhaps maybe the biggest hurdle that we have, and you especially in some of the writings that you've done so far in your literature, you're helping people to recognize that. Now, what they do with the information that you're giving them is their choice because of what you just said there with the preconceived notions.
Exactly. So we need to break those standards. It's
Absolute.
not necessarily bad. As a matter of fact, it's not bad to have a conventional outlook on life. You have to trust some of the things that are around you, some of the people who are around you. You have to honor that. Otherwise, you wake up every day in absolute fear and trepidation that there's nothing reliable. There are lots of things that are reliable. Mexican food is very reliable most of the time. So, but on the other hand, you got to test that out in order to increase and improve the way you perceive the world. So, deductively, you've got to say there's something out there that just doesn't fit what I normally understand. Why is that? How do I think through that? What do I do with that information to incorporate it into my little womb within the world? On the other hand, if there's something you really want badly enough, you're going to shape everything else that you see around you into that mindset. Okay, that's how we exist. We walk outside and we look up, and if it's a clear day, the sky is blue. I mean, that's just the way I expect it to be when I go outside. If I go outside and the sky is plaid, I'm in trouble because I've got to figure that out pretty quickly. What's going on in here that suddenly changed my perspective? And I can want all I want, but what I need is to make sure there's a balance between inductive thinking and deductive thinking. That's all I got.
Very interesting there, Mark. And I have a question for you.
Sure.
Because we kind of talk about these kinds of notions here. I think you've got some exercises in rut management that talk about how you can
Oh,
analyze or how you can assess for yourself or recognize for yourself which way you're leaning. Because I know we've been speaking about inductive, deductive. We've been talking to thinkers about the way they think, the hows.
yep.
And I know that there's something that you have presented in one of your books there
You're
that perhaps the
and you're giving me time to try to find my
well, I'm not stretching it out as much, but it perked an ear for me because I was thinking, now wait a minute, there's something that can help someone who may be relatively new to this manner of, now what am I doing here? How am I doing it? Um, there are some things that are exercise. Thank you. The wannabe exercise. What do you want to be? What do you want to think? Just as you said, the needy notion versus the wanty notion is very interesting. It comes into play right here. And
right
I
here.
think we might even have a little time if you care to explain a little bit of this or
Absolutely, I do.
just briefly.
When you're on your course, and I probably should bring up the rut map as well, but we have done that a lot, and you can always go through one of the other episodes, especially what's my rut. That's a great episode to look at for this. Um, when you are thinking about your destination, when you're traveling that rutted road and saying, "Hey, this is either wonderful or I am so bored to tears with this. I've got to make it interesting." Careful. That's when inductive thinking starts to kick in. And you want to be a little bit deductive about how to pursue your wannabes. So when I'm talking about this, think about when you were a kid, and first thing out of your thought pattern was, what do I want to grow up to be? And not what you are, but what you want to grow up to be. And they fell into categories: policeman, fire person. Yeah, let me be nondescript about it. Police person, fire person, uh, you know, doctor, lawyer, baker, whatever it is. We had these things that we saw out there that were very basic tenets to say, I want to serve people, I want to save people, I want people to look at me, whatever it was. So that's what your wannabe is all about. And what was so exciting back then about that dream? Was it, you know, wearing a fireman's hat and riding on the back of a truck? Was that really what was exciting, or putting out the fire, or whatever it was? Uh, do you remember what caused you to want to be that? Was it a movie you saw? Was it an episode? Were you ever in a hospital and the doctor was just a neat person, and you said, oh my gosh, I want to be that. I want to wear that stethoscope, whatever it was. And then, did you go back then to act out the part? Did you try to be what that was? And did you discover, oh my gosh, that's hard? Or I don't like fires, they're hot, or whatever it is, you might change your mind. What did you do about that? Did you reset your course, or did you just go to agenda number 2? Remember what that was? I don't care. I give up. We don't want to do that. So in that wannabe exercise, how did it make you feel, and how did others around you react to all of this? What did your parents, your siblings, and friends think of your wannabe? You can never grow up to be a doctor. You're dumb like Mark, or something like that. So these are things that will challenge you into reimagining your wannabe. And then you can come back and say, okay, maybe that origin wasn't really what I wanted to be, but I'd better go back then to the beginning and say, okay, what now is my destination that I want? Not that you're necessarily not going to change this again, but it's a way of setting a course that allows you to take the paths necessary to get to what you want to ultimately be.
Excellent. And I'm glad that we were able to pop that up in a timely manner for us for this episode, because I do believe that for those who have already landed with you before with the first whole series, I'm thinking that just a little refresher here, folks, is not bad, because as you can see, this kind of all ties into a chain of thinking and how we want to present ourselves in everyday life, right, Mark?
Oh, absolutely. And it is everyday life. Paul, you just hit on something very important. We tend to go through everyday life and not think about what we're doing, not go through the critical exercises. They become automatic. And suddenly we're on this rutted path, and we're thinking, what am I doing here? And suddenly you're thinking again, and you have to really examine that in a healthy way regularly. Make sure you haven't gotten into some sort of a pit where you're doing the same things over and over again, not even knowing why. So
That's a very good point there, Mark.
well, thank you. I'll try. I had to think about that, or knit about that. whichever it was. But with that, what I'm going to do, let's see, did I even bring it up this time? You know what? I better do that because I think you're going to probably ask me something
You could
about where this
you
all
could read my mind there, Mark.
We're going to have some fun with this. Okay, so all of this fun stuff, and it is fun, by the way. We want to have fun with this. I don't want this to be some kind of an academic exercise where we're over everyone's head. We want people to be thinking in a way that challenges and yet inspires. So that's one of the reasons we set this whole process up. And we have the podcast where we ask, what if? What if you wake up and the sky's plaid? What are you going to do about it? So you can tell us through markcwrites@gmail.com what your ideas are. They may be totally different from ours. And if so, we're not going to pay any attention to them whatsoever. That's a lie. Just seeing if people are listening, not just thinking, but listening. No. We want that. We want people to write in and think with us because that's where the friction comes in that starts a great fire of discussion and aiming at ultimate agreement. So you could also go to the Facebook page, and that's going to be another place to put in your thoughts and your ideas. Then, well, maybe even before then, you might want to jog on over to the website, rutmanagement.com, pick up a couple of those books that I talked about, because that's going to stir some more imaginative ways to identify with your rut and what you want to be, avoid marginalizing others, encourage listening toward unmeasuring other people and your relationships with them and with life, by the way. And then you can join us on our YouTube channel. And that's going to be a place where you can listen to some of these concepts talked through and react again. And that'll take you right back to the rut of going to Mark C. Writes, giving us input, going to Facebook, etc., etc.
Wonderful information there, Mark. And you are correct in saying that we had enough time to put that up there and let the folks that are out there, if they're thinking about perhaps maybe getting in touch with you, those are the ways, the manners by which people can get in touch. So thanks, Mark. As usual, for our listeners, thank you for listening. And as Mark would say, thinkers think. And Mark, if you want to take us out, that's just grand.
I will. And in the meantime, make sure that you're thinking about not just what, but how. Have a great one, thinkers.